what that writing is doing is expressing, um, is looking at and expressing the kind of the most difficult emotions that I've been through, and the most hard, and the most kind of the things that have challenged me the most. And for me personally, staring those right in the face, and not shying away from them, and allowing myself, I suppose, to like walk into the furnace a bit, and like feel the heat of my face, feel a bit scared by it, but to just keep on walking even when you're feeling scared. That is the way that I think that I have realized who I am.
Hi, my name's Johnny Lawrence, and welcome to another episode of Live Talk. Today, I'm here with someone very, very special. I'm here with Clover Stroud. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good, really. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Considering I've just come off the back of homeschooling, so yeah, I'm just going to drink this vodka.
This is your time off now, basically, isn't it? This is the
Yeah,
break in the day. Yeah.
that's right. I've instructed the children to stay away. I said, Daddy's working, but tough day at the office.
Yeah.
How about you? How's your morning been?
It's been good. I mean, it's the same. I've been homeschooling three kids. I've actually got five kids. They are 4, 6, and 8, and then 17 and 20. So obviously, I'm not homeschooling the 17-year-old and the 20-year-old, but the little ones, I am. I use the term sort of homeschooling in the loosest sense, really, because this morning there was a lot of home. There wasn't much schooling going on, basically, but they're
Be
kind of
careful what you own up to.
but they're happy, and they have, we've had a good morning together. I think to get through a morning and feel connected to your kids, and like you've had a nice time together, is easily as valuable as having sat down and done a worksheet with them or taught them some spellings, particularly in this kind of, in this very, very weird time that we're living in at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. I said that to my wife. She's constantly beating herself up. I've never known a woman try so hard, do so well, but be so hard on herself as my wife. And she really does a cracking job. Both me and both our boys think so, but you wouldn't think so by looking at her. And yeah,
That's so normal as a woman, though, to kind of constantly. And I have to say, I do think it is women, mums, that do it more than dads. Is the kind of
yeah,
constantly like berating yourself and feeling like you're not doing it well enough, and feeling like you want to do more for your kids and you want to get it better for your kids. And I don't know why exactly it is that women are harder on themselves than.
yeah,
And obviously this is a big generalization, but that thing, exactly what you've just said, that women do so much kind of parenting and so
yeah,
much mothering, and it's such a demanding big job. And I wish that more women, and I'm as guilty, I'm the same, but I wish more women could see what a great job they're doing, just by being there for their kids, just
yeah.
being around their kids, just feeling connected to their kids, hugging them, talking to them. All of that is just, that's what it's about, really, isn't it?
I mean, my theory is that I said this to lots of women that I've trained along the way, and I say that if it had been down to men to give birth to children, the first man would have come out and said, "Don't do it," and that would have been it. That'd have been the end of the story. Because I just think that women carry a baby in their tummy for 9 months, and then they give birth. Nothing can nothing can touch that. I mean, I've never been so proud or so
Yeah.
overwhelmed than watching my wife give birth the two times that she did. It's just you can't put it into words, can you? So
No, it's a really, really extraordinary thing. And of course, when you have your first child, you get to the end of that pregnancy, you give birth, you have a baby in whatever way that birth goes about, and obviously, then the work really starts. Then the kind of real big challenge starts. But just that physical thing of carrying a child, and feeding a child, and having been the life support, literally the life support to that child,
yeah,
and then giving birth is such a. I mean, I have so much love for women.
Yeah,
Actually, I have like they're warriors. They're incredible beings, and it's a it's a big challenge all the time. And parenting is a big challenge all the time. It really pushes you up, right up against the edges of what you can do and what you can cope with, and the exhaustion and the boredom and the frustration, and
yeah.
also the kind of the love. I've often found I didn't know that the way that I love my kids was going to hurt so much, honestly. The kind of poignancy of the way that I feel about them and watching them grow up and growing away from you. And um, my son, who's 20, actually, he went through all the normal kind of adolescent stuff, which I wrote about in my second book, My Wild and Sleepless Nights. But he got into trouble, he got expelled, normal adolescent stuff. But seeing him coming through that and becoming a young man, it's just like I actually sent him a text message this morning saying being your mum is just one of the biggest privileges of my
Uh-huh.
life, because it's just such a blessing. And seeing him going into adulthood is a joy every day. It's a complete and utter joy.
That's lovely. That's so nice. I mean, there's a vulnerability that comes with being a parent that's just scary. It's
Yeah.
just very scary. It's like you didn't know
Mm,
you could love anything quite that way.
yeah.
Obviously, I love my wife, but it's a different type of love. It's
Yeah.
that parental love is something else.
How old are your children?
8 and 11.
Right.
So that should give you some clue as to how my morning's gone.
Have you got two boys? Have you got
Yeah,
two
it's two
boys?
boys. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
lovely.
Yeah,
Absolutely
two boys,
lovely.
and they're very very spirited. So
Yeah.
that's my toned down word. I better actually tell people a bit about you. Actually, that would be good, wouldn't it? I'm sure that many people know who you are. You're obviously the author of the book My Wild and Sleepless Nights: A Mother's Story, and then there's your first book, if we don't count the camping book,
Sure.
which is The Wild Other.
Mm.
And I said to you just before we started, my wife was really excited about me talking to you today. So you've
Well,
got a
that's
fan in her. So
well, that's good to hear. I love hearing that.
yeah, I mean, this whole conversation comes from really Elizabeth Gilbert's comment that she
Mm.
wrote about your book, and I'm going to read it because otherwise I butcher stuff like this. And it's: every time a woman tells the truth like this, it sets another woman free.
Mm.
My experience of nearly a decade and a half working in the health and fitness industry, for some reason, I sort of found a niche in working with women,
Mm.
especially mothers. And they, I found that women tend to give up their identity for motherhood. And
Mm.
it's been an honor for me to sort of stand and witness them find themselves again. Because inevitably, after going through something like motherhood, you're
Yeah.
going to be a different person, aren't you?
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, you're going to have different values and beliefs. And I've always looked at values and beliefs as like, say we were having a conversation, we were talking about your values and beliefs. I would say, right, okay, Clover, you're a street, you're a road going in a straight line, and off to the right and off to the left are different streets. One might be your partner, one might be your family member, your mother, your dad, whatever. And all of them they all sort of reflect opinions
Mm.
and things. You ask for advice. You say, oh, what should I do about this? What should I do about that? And although they love you and they give you their opinions out of the kindness and wanting the best for you, they can only ever see life through their own sort of perspective and their own sort of lens.
Yeah.
So I always believe that it's really a good idea to establish some values and beliefs, because then you can sense check that it's actually your idea and your path that you're following instead
Yeah.
of somebody else's.
Yeah. Sure.
And I think that's a really important thing. And all of your work, I believe, is around self-development for women.
Yeah.
I mean, please tell me if I'm wrong.
No, it
and
absolutely is. Yeah.
and I see it strongly themed around self-identity, self-esteem, self-belief.
Mm.
And I just think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing. And that statement really encapsulates the feeling that I get and I see from other women that I've been training.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the reasons I wrote the second book, so both books are memoirs, and I'm writing my third memoir. Although I don't really like to call them memoirs, I like to say that I write about the way life feels, and I do it on my Instagram page as well. Actually, I really am fascinated by why we feel things and how that makes us behave, and what those feelings are and what they feel like and how we endure them, and how we can maybe turn the harder feelings into something more positive or more beautiful. And I think that that was I started that in my first book, which is called The Wild Other, and that was I wrote that I'd been a journalist for basically 15 years. I'd had children in my 20s, and but something happened to me when I was 16, which was that my mum, I'd had a very happy childhood. I was really lucky to have had a very happy childhood. I'm the youngest of five, but my mum had a really, really horrific accident when I was 16. She fell off a horse and she was left. She was in a coma for several months, and when she kind of came round over a period of time, she was very profoundly brain damaged, and she couldn't walk or talk or look after herself or anything. And um, that happened when I was 16, and she lived in that state for another 22 years until 2013. I was in my late 30s when she died. So I sort of had this very strange experience of the loss of a parent, but in a kind of suspended state of trauma and grief, I suppose, because it wasn't even like her dying, in which case there would have been some kind of forward momentum to take, to kind of take me through the grieving process, I suppose. But I was sort of suspended in this place, and I think that as a result, and I wrote about this in The Wild Other, that trauma became kind of, and because I was 16, that really formative moment in my life, that trauma sort of became part of my DNA, I suppose. It became part of who I am, and I have kind of used that in my life. It motivated me. It scared me. It was a scary thing, but as a kind of a reaction, I think, against Mum's accident, I ended up going out into the world and taking a lot of risks. And I had children young, and I traveled a lot, and I naturally took myself into kind of quite physically dangerous circumstances. I think because I was sort of testing myself, continually, basically. And um, and so the first book is kind of about that development and how I got through those 2 decades, and the kind of physical challenges that I put myself up against. But when I wrote the second book, it was in my late 30s. I just had my fifth child, and I was really aware that I felt just as kind of overwhelmed and lost and exhausted and in love with this baby as I had done with my first child. And I wanted to write about what does well, I wanted to talk to other women about, like, are you feeling this? Do you feel scared? Do you feel depressed? Do you feel overwhelmed by this? Do you feel like you've got so much love in you for your child that you might eat your child or something? Do you sometimes feel like you might stab your child? You're so in such an odd place. And I started talking to people, and overwhelmingly women were saying, yes, yes, I feel these things as well. And I started talking to people on Instagram about it. So that was kind of like my process, was like wanting to really write a book about what does motherhood really, really feel like, because I think that mothers are so unseen, basically, and that we as mothers, we find it hard to see ourselves, let alone for other people to see us. um, and that quote from Elizabeth Gilbert about setting other women free when you tell the truth like that, it's been a huge privilege as part of writing the book to have a lot of communication with other women about, and that's largely through my Instagram, people saying, your book made me feel less ashamed of the way I was feeling, and therefore I could move on from that shame and enjoy myself more. Or it made me feel, it made me feel seen in this very unseen way. Or it made me feel things that I didn't know that I really felt. It put words into this kind of strange state that I've been since I've had kids. And so that kind of that sort of finding your identity, yeah, for me is a really big part of the kind of motivation of why I write, I suppose, and why I really enjoy it, because I do think I have an ability to describe emotions in a very in a very visual, very kind of vivid way, and I can conjure up emotions. And obviously, our emotions are scary. They're scary. They're scary things, aren't they?
Yep.
That
Yeah.
exist inside us. And I hope in my writing, I'm kind of facing that bravely and putting words to it and helping. And I enjoy doing it, although it's very painful doing it. But I love talking to other people about the effect it has on them and their lives as well. That's one of the, that's one of the really great, wonderful privileges of being a writer, basically.
I would say that's exactly what you achieve. There's this funny sort of paradox around motherhood of what it should like and what it is.
Yeah.
And I watch my wife and my clients, and my clients have gotten to know me quite well now. So I'll know when they come into a session, do you need to rant?
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
and
yeah,
lots of words will be said, and lots of things that I know wholeheartedly they don't mean. I
yeah,
know they don't mean it, but it needs to get it out there. Then afterwards they have a little chuckle to themselves and think, oh, wasn't that silly? But you
yeah.
know, I said to you before, I have a unique perspective on mums,
Mm,
because I had to witness domestic violence towards my
mm,
mother from my dad and to
mm,
my siblings.
mm.
I was a victim or a survivor of child abuse, and my mum, as I said to you previously, kindly calls me her life coach, which I like I said, I treasure that. But
Yeah.
it means I've seen the real side of it. I've
Mm,
seen how it just feels like sometimes you're in utter despair. You're doing your absolute best. There is nothing more you can give. There's
mm,
nothing more you can do, but
mm,
somehow it never feels enough.
mm,
And
mm.
that feeling right there is unfortunately a realistic side of motherhood.
Yeah.
And when you talk about that, it, like my wife said to me, to say to you that she gets so much comfort from knowing she's not the only one that feels like she's going nuts.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, it's funny because we've all, we are one of, she and I are two of millions of women who are going through this thing
Hmm.
of being mothers.
Yeah.
And why is it that we, that there is still, I mean, I think it is, I think the dialogue about the way it makes you feel and what it does to you and what it does to your life, your relationship, your sense of self, your career, your sex life, your internal life, that is opening up that dialogue. But it's just so strange that it's that women have felt so kind of invisible, I suppose. And I guess it's something to do with not wanting to, we don't want to admit, we don't want to talk about, there's a certain shame attached, isn't there, to saying this thing, these
Yeah.
wonderful children, these incredible blessings, these beautiful, beautiful beings are driving me to the absolute limits of myself and my ability to cope, and that, to the edge of my they're driving me to distraction, beyond distraction. And I think saying to other women, it's okay to say that. That doesn't make you any less as a mother. It doesn't make you any, it doesn't mean you don't love your children.
Nope.
But to say it's okay to feel those things is a really, really valuable, really, really valuable thing to do, for sure.
But that's exactly right. It is okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to, you should never deny your emotions. You feel what you feel, and they're there for a reason,
Mm,
everyone, and at the moment we're in a situation where not only have you got the hardest job in the world as a mother or a parent, you've now
mm.
got to be a teacher, and you've got to be a full-time cook
Yeah.
all day as well,
Yeah.
and all the other jobs you've got on as
And
well. So
the sort of answering endless questions and providing them with comfort and providing them with, reassuring them that we're not all going to die, even though when you're not completely sure, maybe we are all going to die. You know what I mean? It's like, this is a very, very weird time to be living through as a parent.
oh, it is.
It's an unlike any other, it's unlike anything else that's gone before. And so parents are being kind of tested in ways that they haven't been tested before. And it's tough. It's really hard. So the more that we can talk to each other about it, I think the more help, the more helpful it is. And I also talk about, I kind of write on my Instagram. So I'm actually writing a sort of a book. My sister died just before, at the end of 2019. She had had breast cancer for 4 years, but she died very, very suddenly. And I've been writing about her, well, and also about what it's like kind of living with pain that sometimes feels kind of unendurable, unbearable. And I found, that there is a desire to articulate this stuff. There's a desire for people to talk about and and kind of acknowledge what's happening. And I actually posted a clip on my Instagram yesterday of, it was actually a little bit of film of her funeral, which is obviously quite unusual to see a bit of film of someone's funeral. But it was a really incredible moment when we carried her coffin out, and a lot of people have contacted me since then, just in the last day or so, saying seeing kind of, you know, these extreme emotions and these extreme feelings really close up has enabled me to start processing. Somebody contacted me and said, like, start processing the loss of my nephew who died very suddenly, you know, a year ago. I haven't really been able to think about it. Other people saying, you know, it's enabled me to think about my husband's passing, and I think that that's just so it's so important to kind of go there, I suppose, to go to the scary places in your with your emotional life and
Yeah.
not deny it, because I think it's only through going through it that you can come through it, I suppose. You know, you can come to another place rather than get blocked in a place of darkness or of depression, and that, you know, whether that's the challenges of motherhood or dealing with grieving or the you know, the current stuff of people losing their careers and their, you know, whole support system at the moment. The more
Yeah.
that we talk to each other, the more that we communicate, and the more that we reach out to each other, the more we can help each other. I really do passionately believe that.
Well, that's why it felt so important to me to speak to you, because you know, I'll probably get a lot of guys that tell me this is a bad thing to say, but there is a lot of pressure on mums, whether they place that pressure on themselves or whether it's placed upon them. They mums, from what I see mostly, want to do the best all the time.
Yeah.
And you know, my wife, she'll sit and she's got a really great set of friends where they've got a WhatsApp group, and quite honestly, it makes for hilarious viewing. There's a lot of really quite funny things being said on there,
Yeah.
but the undertone is that this is really hard. This
Yeah.
is really hard. I'm finding it hard. You're
Mm,
not alone.
mm,
You know, this is a really hard thing, you know.
mm.
And you know, it's been a lot of mics being left on accidentally around schooling and things
Yeah.
like lots of regrettable conversations being over.
What's your wife sort of finding? What does she find helps her to get through it? What does she find? Where does she find the kind of sustenance, or what does she, when she's at the edge of her tether, you know, the edge of her, yeah, the end of her tether, the edge of her kind of sanity? What does she do? How does she cope with it?
Well, interesting enough, and I spoke to her about it last night. We had some tears last night, and my wife has this thing that I very often see when times do get hard, is where she's very brave and she's very tough and she tries to tough it out. And although I tried my best to give her the forum to talk, she's not always in the right place for that. And last night we had the tears, and I stopped everything we were doing. I was like, okay, this is that time when we need to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, she was more focused on the fact that she was being really hard on herself. She was saying some really unkind things to herself, you know, really beating herself up. And she was concerned that, you know, she was drinking more prosecco than she should, which I don't agree. I think she's very moderate with her alcohol, and eating too much chocolate and stuff, you know, and you know, I was sort of trying to be careful because you can, as you're well aware, I'm sure, you can get bit in these situations. So I was like, should we talk about why you're doing that? And we had that conversation, and you know, we had a cuddle, and you know, I just tried to be supportive but also try not to say anything, you know, typically blokish. That's not helpful at all. You
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
but you know, she's been reaching for it, and what we came to the understanding of last night was, although we love her, need her around and all them sort of things, she's an invaluable part of the family.
Mm,
Her self-care
mm,
is directly connected to her self-love,
mm,
and that's what's needed.
mm.
You know, we quite often say in our house, if you wouldn't say it to somebody else, don't say it to yourself.
Yeah, totally.
And she's, you know, she was reaching for things and she was being hard on herself, saying, oh, you're just being greedy and all this to herself. And I'm like, no, you needed that. So what we've come to is, what do you need? You know,
Yeah.
and it's something that I've heard. I know, you know, Mandy Manners, and
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, and you know, her and I had a conversation not so long ago, and that, what do you need?
Yeah.
That's so important. What do you need? You know, because why are you reaching for the chocolate? Why are you reaching for the prosecco? What is it giving you?
Yeah.
That's what's
Yeah.
important to understand. And so she's very keen to go sea swimming, but doesn't want to follow the fashion at the moment.
It's a thing.
Yeah, she'll hate me for saying that. I'll be in trouble. I'll be sleeping on the sofa now. But like I say, this is all about self-development. So your question of like, what does she do? Well, I don't think she's quite worked that out yet. But I think the conversation we had last night has directed her to go within and ask herself, what does she need? Because there is a tendency amongst people, not just women, to go to Instagram for the answers.
Yeah, yeah,
Quite possibly the worst place you could go, because it
yeah,
pokes and prods at all your
yeah,
insecurities, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah. No, totally. And it can make you, I mean, I think that if you start thinking about Instagram as a community rather than as a place to go to look at stuff, I suppose, because when you start looking at other people's lives, you can end up feeling like you're lacking in some way. You can end up feeling jealous. You can end up feeling annoyed. You can end up feeling depressed by other things you see. Whereas, and I have definitely, especially when, so my youngest is 4, and I went onto Instagram when in 2000. Remember, I mean, I think as with a newborn baby, it's a very it's a place to be, sitting up at night, feeding a baby, changing a baby, whatever. You spend a lot of time on your own. And Instagram, you can sit there and scroll Instagram, but it can really, I think, you're so vulnerable when you've had a newborn baby, and then when you've got a young child, toddler, you are in a really vulnerable state. You're really, really, really exhausted, and Instagram can really kind of play into that, and it brings out all the worst of it. And I know that it didn't really help me, I don't think, when Lester, who's my 4-year-old, was a really little baby, even though I did spend a lot of time there. But I am finding now, if I kind of think of it more as a community of people, and I do genuinely find like true connection, human connection is an incredibly important place for me, for human connections. The problem is it can get the connections can feel so human that they're more compelling than the connections that you can have with the real people in your life. That's one of the things that I think is a problem, that I can want to go and I can have a really strong desire to just go and chat to people on Instagram rather than do stuff with my kids. And obviously it's a balance, because actually sometimes that's totally and utterly fine to do that. It's giving yourself some time off to go and have some adult chat with other women or whatever. But they're also, I think we all know that feeling of like addiction to Instagram and the addiction to the phone, and that can end up making you feel a bit rubbish, really, can't it? So it's about, that's a kind of balance, really, isn't it? And it's a balance. Although I say that, it's a balance, as though that balance is so easy to achieve. It's a hard one to achieve. It is a hard one to achieve. So I do really sympathise with your wife. But I guess when we reach for those things, whether it's Instagram, whether it's like alcohol, chocolate, we're kind of looking for a feeling of connection, really, aren't we? We're looking for some kind of like something to change the way we feel, something to change the way our emotional setup is. So I suppose it's trying to like work out new ways to do that, whether that's listening to a podcast or the classic one of like having a lovely big bath, lighting candles, going for a walk outside if you can. Sometimes I think it's just even, and I guess I don't do yoga. I wish I did yoga, but like sometimes just like lying down on the floor. Do you know what I mean? Lying flat down on the floor, putting yourself into a different physical position than you might normally be in, kind of changes a setup in your brain in some way or another. Trying to fight, but obviously in the days that we're in now as well, thinking about your wife and the idea of self-care and other women, that as a woman, one thing that I know that helps me a lot is going, and when I'm feeling really, really bad, is going and meeting up with a girlfriend and going for a walk and having a chat and just putting it all to rights. And obviously we can't even do that now.
I know. And that's why the Instagram thing is becoming a lot more prevalent, because you're, like you say, inevitably it's people seeking connection, isn't it? And because we can't do anything because we might die, which is just crazy at the moment. But I mean, like you say, that classic having a bath, or that it's that self-love, it's that loving yourself enough to do it for yourself, you know,
Mm.
to tell the kids just to go away, leave you alone,
Yeah.
you know, like if my wife hears the word mom one more
Yeah.
time, I think she's just going to go bang.
Yeah.
But it has that massive impact on, as we spoke about, self-esteem, self-belief, and it's about, you know, bringing it back to self-development. What do you want as a woman now who's been a mum, a wife, a sister, a daughter? What are
Mm.
you without those things? You
Mm.
know, what are you as Caroline, my wife, as
Mm.
Clover? Who are you? And
Mm.
actually, when you've been a mum in demand, like I, I'm not going to sit here and tell you as a man that I know what it's like to be a mum. That would be ridiculous and probably quite dangerous. So I don't think I'll do that. But yeah, being a mum is something else. I mean, I watched Caroline last night. She came downstairs and there was that look of like she was literally sort of edging towards the sofa, like, oh, the promised land. I get to sit. And she
Mm.
sat down and she just said, "Mum, can I have a cuddle?" And I was like, "Oh, bless you."
Yeah.
There's no point me getting up because they don't want to cuddle from
Yeah.
dad.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
it's a thing of being needed and wanted all the time. And obviously,
Yeah,
the thing that I find sort of difficult as well and kind of like frustrating is that I had exactly the same thing last night. My daughter like wanted me to get into bed with her and read to her, and it was, you know, it was like 9 o'clock, and I just wanted to be downstairs and talking to Pete, my husband, and just having, or just not talking to Pete, my husband, even just like sitting there and just like zoning out for a bit.
I can cut that bit out if you like.
But that thing of being needed all the time, but you also know, and this is sort of part of the poignancy of motherhood, is that when you know that you're going to miss this time as well, you know that they are going to grow up and then they're not
Yeah,
going to be needed in that way, and you're going to want to be needed. I'm sure when my little daughter Evangeline, who's when she's 18 or 28 or whatever, I will, God, I would do anything, I'm sure, to like sit in bed and read with her and cuddle with her. But it's so it's trying to find a way of enjoying it while it's happening at the moment now, without also feeling completely and utterly sort of swamped by it and
yeah,
exhausted by it and that loss of self. And I think that trying to I really believe in trying to, I mean, for me it's in writing, but I do believe that anybody can be creative, like the kind of, and that can feel like a really big kind of a really high bar and a really big challenge that's too difficult. Like, how do I be creative now when I've given all to my kids? But whether it's like making a cake, or doing a very simple sketch, or doing making something with your hands, creating something, um, doing something which means that something is coming out of you, which is something about your sort of, your being creative is about your emotional internal life and
yeah.
expressing that in some way or another. And so finding some outlet for that feels like a really a way of sort of caring for yourself in some way, I
Yeah.
suppose, without putting more pressure on yourself as well.
Honoring yourself, respecting
Yeah,
yourself,
yeah.
like allowing, like my son and I this morning, we had an art lesson.
Mm.
And before I knew it, there I was with him painting away. We hadn't said a word for about half an hour.
Nice. It felt nice, right?
Yeah, it was lovely. It was really,
Yeah.
really nice. And if you'd have told me, hey, do you want to go in the kitchen and do that? I would have probably said no. I've got more important
Yeah.
things to do. But actually,
Yeah.
there was nothing more important than that. And before I knew
Yeah.
it, my wife was colouring too. So
Yeah. Yeah, colouring in,
yeah,
exactly. I mean,
yeah,
I'm absolutely. You can also feel like, oh God, I should be one of those parents who's really good at crafts or whatever. I am absolutely crap at crafts. I can't draw, I can't paint, I can't make, I can't like
yeah,
make some lovely little model out of cardboard. I'm rubbish at the things that I make. I know I can write really well, but it doesn't matter at all. The kind of level of what you're doing doesn't matter. And even if it is just colouring, I can sit down beside my daughter, exactly, and do some colouring in with her, and she will enjoy that sort of presence of being with each other. I love that
yeah.
way. You described sitting down with your son, and you hadn't spoken to each other, but you're sitting there for half an hour just in your
Having a
space
lovely time.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
I mean,
brilliant.
we always laugh in our family. Obviously, I've blessed my wife, a family of boys. There's me and the
Yeah.
two lads, and we're always making fun of her because she's much like Monica Geller. She'll turn anything into competition. So she's there colouring, looking up. I'm like, just stick to what you're doing. Like, it's fine. So yeah, I mean, we do have fun, and it's just yeah. I just last night was it's funny. To me, in this moment, I sit here thinking the irony of the conversation we had last night and then getting to speak to you today is just sometimes the universe pushes people together, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it really does,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, just to close things down, because I'd imagine you've got lots and lots to do. I mean, on self-development, on women, figuring out who they are, what they are, without being a mum, a
Mm,
wife, a sister, a daughter.
mm.
What what really big sort of advice, lesson, what observations have you made over all of your inevitable research for your books? What I
Mm.
mean, that might be putting you on the spot, and I'm sorry about that.
Really, really good question. It's a really, really good question about how do you kind of feel. I think for me, I mean, for me, I've done that through writing, but what that writing is doing is expressing, um, is looking at and expressing the kind of the most difficult emotions that I've been through, and the most hard, and the most kind of the things that have challenged me the most. And for me personally, staring those right in the face, and not shying away from them, and allowing myself, I suppose, to like walk into the furnace a bit, and like feel the heat of my face, feel a bit scared by it, but to just keep on walking even when you're feeling scared. That is the way that I think that I have realized who I am. And when I was younger, I was able to do that by being out there in the world, and I went and I lived in Texas, and I rode in rodeos, and I traveled in Russia. I did stuff that was like that challenged me out there in the world. But I think as a mother, just getting through the days with your kids can challenge you in the same way, and it can take the same, much more bravery to be sort of generous and open and loving and present with your kids. So I think giving yourself a place and a time to it's more than checking in with yourself. It's really, really looking deep into yourself. And for me, it was also writing down all the stuff that I felt was worst about myself, in a way, the stuff that I felt that I was that I was challenged by, about the way that I might behave, or the way that I thought of myself. And by kind of writing it and putting it onto the page, I could see that I wasn't this, that I was all of those things. I was all the sums of a human being. I was all of the light and all of the dark. And for me also, increasingly, I find that when I'm writing, I need to look at other people's writing, and I need to and I read a lot of poetry, and I really, really enjoy the feeling of, maybe when I'm feeling down or feeling depressed or anxious or whatever, reading poetry that goes with that mood. Reading poetry about loss, or about grief, or about suffering, hearing somebody else's words and being in somebody else's head and feeling that sort of sense of solidarity is massively kind of consoling, and it's massively inspiring. And I think it helps me to see that what I'm going through is valid, and it is important, and that it has a place, and that I can articulate that place as well, and that it will change. It will always change. So that's a
So
quite a long-winded way to say. I think really, really looking into yourself, and being, not judging yourself, just seeing everything,
yeah.
and being present to it, is, for me, has been one of the big things of like becoming a woman, I would say, and is a really, really big important part of my journey through, onwards into through motherhood as well, and just life, actually.
Yeah.
This is not necessarily about being a mother. This is just about being a human being too.
in a very tough time.
Yeah,
Well,
definitely.
yeah, I mean, what you said there sounds to me like you just look for hope, don't you? That, you know, when you are going through them hard times, that someone else has been through it, come out the other side, and
Mm.
they're okay, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
hope is something that I think hope is a good word at the moment, isn't
yeah,
it?
definitely, definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
it's a
It's a
strong word.
yeah.
Listen, I'm so grateful for your time today. Thank you so much. And you know, for what it's worth, your bravery in what you write is inspiring. You're a real pioneer.
Thank you.
And you know, I wish you all the best
Thank
moving forward.
you.
I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. You know.
It's been really, really nice talking to you, Donny. I've really, really, really enjoyed it. It's been a real privilege. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. And let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, for sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
thank you.
Okay, bye bye.